What's up, everybody? This is the Act Man here, and today I'm going to be talking about the possibility of the Flood returning in Halo 6. Now, we all miss the Flood, right? Let's not beat around the bush here. We all miss fighting the Flood. In my opinion, they were one of the funnest enemies to fight in Halo 1, 2, and 3. They really threw things for a loop and added a lot of depth to the different encounters. Now, we haven't seen the Flood in a new Halo game since 2009 with Halo Wars, and before that it was Halo 3 in 2007. So it has been quite a long time since we've gotten to fight or see the Flood in a brand new Halo game. Now, you might think Halo 6 is going to be the best time to bring the Flood back, to throw the players for a loop, to give us this enemy we've been craving to fight again. And you might think with Halo 5's ending, showing off the Halo ring, that we're going to be on that Halo ring fighting the Flood. You might think this is the best time to bring the Flood back, right? Wrong! While I'm one of those people that really want to fight the Flood again, I don't think it should happen in Halo 6. And let me tell you why. For one, 343 has way too many priorities they need to figure out by the time Halo 6 launches. They've got to figure out the campaign, what story they want to tell, what direction they want to go in. They need to figure out if they're going to drop the squad-based gameplay, if they're going to keep that. They need to figure out campaign scoring and time trials, as well as making a usable theater. I mean, if Halo 5 is any indication of what 343 is capable of launching a brand new Halo game with, they shouldn't even be thinking about the Flood, alright? And in my opinion, Halo 6 should launch with all of the essential features, and it should be in working condition on day one. I know, that's absurd, isn't it? But things like campaign scoring, time trials, adding a custom game lobby limit, fixing all the bugs with the artificial intelligence, fixing the god-awful spawning system in Warzone, the list just goes on and on and on. And if you look at some of the patch updates from each month, some of the things they needed to fix are absolutely ridiculous. They actually had to fix the color schemes post-launch. Alright, so in my opinion, 343 should not be prioritizing the Flood until they figured out everything else. Second, it'll throw a huge monkey wrench into everything. If they add the Flood back, well, how are they going to tell that in Halo 6? What sort of story are they going to tell with the Flood? Now, the biggest problem I haven't talked about in Halo 5's story is that there's just a lack of focus on anything in particular. Now, adding the Flood back makes that even worse. So now we have to focus on Chief recovering from the death of Cortana, if that's even going to be a main point of Halo 6. We have to focus on Cortana uprising with the AI and using the Halo ring for whatever purpose she wants, and the Covenant, Swords of Sang Helios, the Arbiter, Osiris, Spartan Locke, Dr. Halsey. There's just so many focus points in Halo 5 that weren't fleshed out nearly enough. And in Halo 6, if you add the Flood back in, it's only going to spread the focus out even more and make the story even more disjointed and bad. And you have to think, how will the Flood affect the story, the gameplay, the campaign, the multiplayer? Are they going to be in Warzone firefight? There's already so many monkey wrenches in Halo right now, and adding another one is just not a good idea. And then they're going to have to focus on designing the Flood as an enemy, when yet they still haven't nailed down the Prometheans yet. So in Halo 6, they gotta nail a successful formula with the Prometheans, make them fun to fight, as well as balancing and tweaking the Covenant, the weapons, the sandbox, everything. There's so much work that needs to be done for Halo 6 before they can even think about adding the Flood. And lastly, I don't want the Flood to be ruined. Now, 343's track record speaks for itself, right? They have a history of changing or ruining almost everything that made the Halo games what they are. And I think we've been lucky enough to not see the Flood get ruined. Well, except for those hilarious designs in Halo 4. Oh God, and those sound effects. Oh God, just shut up! Shut up! You know, and with the T rating of Halo 5, if they're gonna try and push that again in Halo 6, how are they gonna make the Flood T rated? Are they gonna tone down the gore and blood? Are they gonna make them look cartoony and fake? I mean, how would they add the Flood into Halo 6, make it work with everything else, and manage not to ruin them? Because the biggest thing about the Flood is that they have always been a scary, horrifying enemy to fight. Not so much like the Necromorphs in Dead Space, but still horrifying and scary in their own respect. The Flood are not a joke. They're one of those things that if you're going to put them in the game, you gotta go full force with it. You gotta pull out all the stops. You gotta bring your A game. And suffice to say, I simply don't believe 343 is capable of that at this point. I think they need to focus in on what they have right now, do the best that they can to recover the story, to make sure the AI works properly, that all the screws are tightened and fixed on day one before we can add the Flood in the future. If the AI of the Flood have as many problems as the AI in Halo 5, it's gonna ruin their impact. They're not gonna be scary. They're not gonna be intimidating. You know, if we see a Flood on a turret and he's just twitching around like this elite here, that's not scary. You know, that's not the Flood. So I don't want the Flood to be ruined by poor AI design, by a T rating, by the lack of blood and gore that personifies them. And I don't want them to be designed in a way that is completely absurd, annoying, and does not look or represent the Flood. In conclusion, I want to be able to fight the Flood again. I have been eagerly awaiting their return since Halo 3. I think they are one of the funnest enemies to fight in a first-person shooter game, and while I want them to return, I think 343 needs to get their priorities straight. They need to launch Halo 6 in a functional, working state with all the necessary features. They need to avoid throwing more monkey wrenches into the formula, and before they even think about adding the Flood in, they need to reflect on what it is the Flood are. What makes them such a successful enemy? What makes them so intimidating and scary? What makes them fun to fight? They need to figure out so many things before they can even think about adding the Flood back in Halo. And I hope one day they can come back in glorious fashion, maybe take us all by surprise. Or maybe they can even come back in a horror Halo spin-off game. Wouldn't that be a nice treat, huh? Maybe a topic for another video. But what are your opinions on the Flood? Do you want to see them return in Halo 6? Do you want to see them return at all? What do you think about everything I've said so far? Post your comments down below as always. I love hearing what you guys have to say. Alright, that's all I've got for today. This is the Act Man signing out. Peace!